Truth is setting us free. This is a podcast for those of us who want to be set free. Is that you? The basis for most religions is the practice of spiritual principles. However, in the name of religion, wars are being waged across the planet. The intention of this podcast is to take a step above religion by creating a personal relationship with Spirit, or the God of your understanding. These are some of the principles that are setting me and others free. Principles like peace, joy, gratitude, acceptance, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, and empathy, just to name a few. See if you can identify yourself in the stories that follow and how some of the most inspirational people in my life are practicing these principles and being set free. See if you can be set free through the practice of spiritual principles. I invite you to enjoy what follows. Let's get started then. So I wanted to do maybe an hour long, maybe a little longer, talk about spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And the principle that we agreed upon was forgiveness.
Right.
And so I looked up forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the definition that I came up with. The principle of forgiveness refers to the act of releasing anger, resentment, and negative feelings toward oneself or others who have caused harm or injustice in either a substantive pretext, psychological before emotional retrospect from self or others. In doing so, one can achieve inner peace, which in turn allows them to move on to achieve psychological peace. Okay. So let me go back to my questions. First of all, do you agree with that definition? In part or in full?
I think I can agree with it in full, in terms of the act of releasing. I think that I would add more to it, because the act of releasing is only part of forgiveness. Because without unconditional love and non-judgment, you really can't achieve forgiveness. And so that's what I would add to it.
So what does forgiveness mean to you?
It is the act of releasing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's releasing, I would say, negative feelings, which could include anger, but negative feelings could include a toxic relationship that just went sour, that you may have ended or somebody else may have ended. It could be negative feelings with respect to yourself and acts that you've done in the past, or thoughts that you've had. It could be negative feelings regarding acts of others, or sometimes inaction of others. And the negative feelings could come, and it's not necessarily a physical harm, but it could be a psychological harm that's done that keeps your own inner consciousness in turmoil and in chaos, and probably even in confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a good example of that. Is that my daughter is adopted. I brought her home. She was 3 days old when I brought her home. Mm-hmm. And when she turned 21, I introduced her to her birth family. But one of the things that she cannot seem to do is forgive her birth mother for having placed her for adoption when she kept an older brother and sister. And she doesn't understand why she was chosen to be given up. And despite, everything that I've told her in terms of what the facts are, what the truth is in terms of what was going on with her birth mother at the time, she doesn't accept that, because she doesn't think that any woman should ever give up her child, even if it's in the best interest of the child. And so she doesn't accept that it was in the best interest of her, although she knows the truth is that it really was in the best interest. She understands and realizes that she had a wonderful childhood and growing up, and very good parents that raised her, but she harbors resentment toward her birth mother, and is really disrespectful to her and that sort of thing. And so even in the gesture of her birth mother trying to do something good for that particular child, it still has caused psychological harm to her that she has yet at 37 not been able to set aside.
I wonder if she understands that one of the options that her mother may have been considering is abortion.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that. We've absolutely talked about that. And she at one point early in her life, she said, well, maybe she should have aborted me. And I said, well, then if she had done that, we would have never had an opportunity to develop the wonderful relationship that we have. And that certainly would have been a loss to both of us. And she goes, oh yeah, I guess you're right about that. But still harbors this inner pain in her heart with respect to that.
So I believe that's a really good example, but it brings up another question for me. And that is, how do you differentiate forgiveness from acceptance or tolerance?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I look at it, I look at acceptance and tolerance as a choice. For example, I believe that as a Black person, that I have tolerated a lot of things from other people as it centers around the concept of racism, but I've not accepted it. But at the same time, I have in my heart forgiven people who have exhibited that sort of intolerance with respect to race and or the bigotry that people have shown. So I think that the forgiveness comes in when you recognize that what the people are doing in tolerating you or non-tolerance of you or not accepting you is really based upon their ignorance and their lack of understanding of the concept of unconditional love. Their lack of understanding that we really are one people, and it doesn't really matter what our gender is, what our color is, any of the isms that separate us. That doesn't matter. We're really one people. And once you accept that, I believe, in your heart, then your heart can open to forgive. It's not, the forgiveness doesn't mean that you like a person's behavior. The forgiveness is not that you're even accepting their behavior. The forgiveness is that you are saying, Father, they know not what they do. They know not what they do because they have not reached a level of spiritual consciousness to recognize that we're all one people, and it doesn't really matter, what our race or gender or sexuality or whatever the situation may be is. And so I see tolerance and acceptance really much different from forgiveness. And that forgiveness is not either toleration or acceptance. Forgiveness is saying, while I don't agree with your behavior, I'm letting your behavior go, and I'm not going to let it affect me. And I'm not going to let it affect my heart. And I have the capacity to forgive you. That doesn't mean I'm going to be your best friend or that we're going to hang out and go out for coffee and tea or drinks or whatever the case may be. But I can forgive you and I can let you go because we're each on our own individual path of spirituality or ascension, or we may not be on a path at all. And so it's not for me to determine what path a person is on, but it is for me to say that I'm going to forgive you for what you may have just said to me or what you may have just done, because I know it's out of your ignorance. You don't know what you're doing, or maybe even if you do know what you're doing, you don't recognize that we really are one people and that we all come from the same creator, and so you have work to do on yourself, but that's not for me to do. What I have to do is forgive you for lack of anything. I'm just going to say your transgression.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I know a lot of people who feel that they're being tolerated in their families' lives. Even though their families are saying, I accept you for who you are, but at the same time, I really don't respect the kinds of relationships that you have with other people. And I know that there has been a difficult time, even in my own life, of having people say they accept me on certain terms, but not fully who I am, and accepting my humanity, openly, rather than, seeing parts of me that they like and other parts that they don't. And so that's been a challenge, throughout my whole life. At the beginning, I think I was a lot more accepting of how people tolerated me. But the older I get, the more I really expect to be accepted for who I am. And so that brings up another question for me, and that is one I want to ask you, and that is, why is it sometimes difficult to forgive ourselves and others when we're only accepted as something to or someone to tolerate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you had that experience, first of all?
Oh yeah, that's a really good experience. I mean, I like every person who may not practice heterosexuality. Uh, um, my family, my immediate family, I would say my brothers and sisters, my mother when she was living. There's been what I would say was a toleration. It was a toleration with my mother until we really had some deep and soul searching talks. And until she met Pam and fell in love with Pam, because Pam is just she's just incredibly sweet person. Her personality is just very, very gentle and sweet. And then it moved from toleration to acceptance. However, my middle sister, I would say my middle sister, most of all, she sees my life as a lifestyle, and my life is not a lifestyle. My life is my life. This is who I am, and this is who I have been for a very long time. I would say dating back to my childhood. And so, and because she is very immersed in the Christian philosophy, I think what she does is tolerate me as opposed to accept me. So I'll give you an example. Recently I had a birthday, August 12th. Well, August 12th is also the anniversary of when Pam and I got married in New York in 2014. We've been together for 25 years, but we didn't get married until after the case passed the Supreme Court, and we decided to have a destination wedding. So on my birthday, my sister sent me a happy birthday text, and I said yes, and it's Pam and I's wedding anniversary. I said this is the day that we got married in New York. Absolute silence. Absolute silence. No response. Nothing whatsoever. I didn't really expect a response, but I just wanted to put that out there because I wanted to see whether or not she had changed in her feelings. Because when I was in the hospital, I would say most of my family live in Texas. All of my cousins, my aunt, my uncles, they just rallied. And my sister and my brother that live in Texas, they were very supportive, and they were calling Pam, finding out details and of what was happening with me, because I really didn't have the capacity to talk to people. And so, so after that experience, I wanted to see, I just wanted to, you test the waters. It's like, yes, and it's our wedding anniversary, and absolute silence. And so what that told me is that there really has not been that much of a change. But on the other hand, about 6 years ago, I decided that I had to end an estrangement that I had with my brothers and sisters, because when my mother died in 2009, there were some real interesting things that happened, and as a result of things that happened with my siblings, It ended up that my daughter, Pam, and I did not go to my mother's funeral. And I basically went inward, and I didn't speak to any of my family for about 9 years. And part of it was because I was very, very angry at them and their behavior. But I was also angry with myself. And so I had to deal with that. And I basically started immersing myself in Ernest Holmes and Emmett Fox, Chuck Tipping, the Four Agreements, Miguel Ruiz. I mean, I started, just putting myself in sort of a spiritual renewal process.
Uh-huh.
And then I started working through the forgiveness first of me, for allowing myself to get so angry about the situation, and and also in not communicating with them for that long period of time. And then I had to work through forgiving them. And then I think it was about 2018, Pam and I traveled to Texas, and we basically set up lunch meetings with various members of my family first, so that I could apologize to them for my own behavior and my own allowance of their behavior to affect me so gravely, and to the point where I couldn't even communicate with them. And then I had to tell them that I forgave them, because they didn't understand the extent of how much they hurt me. But at the same time, I told them, I allowed you to hurt me, because, I can't be hurt unless I allowed it. And I did. And so I had to forgive myself for that. And so from that period of time, that reconstituted conversations between my particular brother and a sister in Texas. And so over the years to date, the relationships have improved to some degree, except that my sister, again, because she's so wedded in these notions that the Christian church has taught her, most of which are very untrue and false and misinterpretation of the scripture that she relies on, that she can't get past it. And what I found, particularly in same-sex relationships, when you're having problems with people being intolerant of your choice, my choice. This is my choice. It has nothing to do with you. What I find is that people focus on not the life that you're building as a couple, as a family. They only focus on sex. And you try to talk. I have tried to talk to my sister about it. It's like, do you think our relationship is just based upon sex? I said, early on, that was a big part of it. I said, but today it's not. Pam's 72. I'm 69. I like to go to sleep about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And so does she. So it's like, we have a family. We are companions. We are confidants. We are best friends. And it's that companionship and that loving relationship that perhaps you don't understand. But of course, my sister is not married, and she's never been married, and she's not with anyone. So I don't think she can understand, where I'm coming from to a certain degree. but I had to forgive all of that, sort of negative and toxic behavior to basically explain to them is I am who I am. You didn't create me. You didn't make me. You didn't shape me. I am who I am. You are who you are. I not only accept you for who you are, but I love who you are. I don't want to change you. The only person that can change you is yourself, and you can't change me. So my brother gets it. My younger sister gets it. My other brother in Chicago gets it. This one sister does not get it. So.
And that's always been a challenge, how myopic we can be, in our relationships with each other. We can, many of us only see a portion of what our life is actually like,
Right.
and that's no matter what the sexuality is,
Exactly.
the gender is,
Yeah.
It's that way of seeing from such a selfish and self-centered perspective. I think that is a real challenge for most of us, and that is, that is a process in learning how to forgive.
Right.
Those things first within ourselves, and then with other people as well. Recognizing that, though, it brings up another principle, and that is empathy and compassion as it relates to others. Because now, what I'm actually doing and what it gives me the ability to forgive others is because I can actually identify with what they may be experiencing in the moment. Like you said earlier, they know not what they do.
Right. Exactly.
And that's, one of, I think, the greatest challenges that many people have with forgiveness, because it is so difficult for them to get over that one fact that they may be seeing as part of the experience that someone may be having as a result of a relationship, no matter what the relationship happens to be, know. And it tends to sometimes blind them to whatever beauty they may actually have in their own lives that would be considered worthy for others. I'm hearing you say that she's not in a relationship. She's not been in a relationship. She's never been married.
Right.
So these kinds of ideas, these are the kinds of ideas that really stand in the way of having a peaceful and loving experience in living, and I've just noticed, in my own life, how it's been a process for me to first, because I got all of that stuff too, from the people that were around me, about how the Bible talks about adultery and fornication and all of those things that are considered to be sins, Yet some people who are experiencing those very same things will point to somebody else,
right,
and say, look at what you're doing. You're going to hell. And they're really in a place where they're just as disconnected from the philosophy that they say that they're practicing as they say you are, which has always been a difficult challenge to get over, in other people. But like you pointed out, first you have to start with yourself.
Exactly.
Where would you say, or what would you say, of all of those people that you mentioned, including the Four Agreements, where would you say the tide turned Was it?
Hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that I think his name is Chuck Tipping. I know the last name is Tipping for sure. He wrote a book called Radical Forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And the principles in the book of Radical Forgiveness, they resonated with me. I mean, it touched my heart. And it made me very introspective in terms of looking at myself. And in looking at myself, recognizing how judgmental I had been of my own self,
Mm-hmm.
and how I needed to let that go, because every choice that you make that you think is perhaps a bad choice or maybe not the right choice, and so then you start feeling guilty about it, and then realize you have to forgive yourself, as opposed to just lament in having made a bad decision or a poor choice. Basically what he says is that the forgiveness of self is the hardest part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because you keep reliving it, and if you're reliving it, you haven't forgiven yourself. And it's like, well, why are you reliving it? You only need to really think about it once, and then you have to release it. But what does it mean to release something?
Mm-hmm.
What it means to release something is to completely let it go, to not harbor any guilty feelings or any sadness or any depression around a choice that you made. It is like, so you forgive yourself for that choice if you believe that choice was a wrong choice. And Tipping doesn't believe in what I would call sinful choices, because his basic philosophy is that there is no sin, that we create sin. There is no sin. We create it. And then all of a sudden, a particular act is sinful, simply because we have labeled it as sinful. And if we look at sin from a perspective of it was a wrong choice, or not the correct choice, then we take this concept of sin that we've been taught through the church out of the picture, and we began to look at ourselves more clearly to see that, okay, that's a human way of dealing things, and some choices that we make are going to be the correct choice, or some we will learn at a different time that maybe it wasn't so correct at the time. But we have to learn whatever the lesson is from having made that choice, having then been regretful of the choice, and then let it go. Because once you realize that it was not the best choice, you don't make that choice again. And so because you're not going to make that choice again, you let it go. And basically he then says, when you look at other people, you're not looking at them from choices that they made, but you're looking at them from a more judgmental eye. And we shouldn't be judging them, because whatever they did that we don't agree with, or it doesn't resonate with us, it's not our choice, it was their choice. And it might have been the right choice for them at that particular time, but we're not to judge them for that choice. If we don't like it, we have to deal with not liking it, and then we have to forgive them. And particularly if it's something where someone has exhibited some ill will or harm against you, you still have to forgive them for that. Another example is my youngest sister. I could fairly characterize her as a genius. But there's a fine line between being a genius and insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has severe mental health issues. And she's in her 50s now, and she's had these severe mental health issues since her late 20s. And although I've never represented her in any capacity as a lawyer, she filed a series of bar complaints against me in the state of Arizona. Now, I didn't even know she filed the complaints until the state bar called me one day, and because I'm historically have been very, very active in the bar, they know me very well. So they called me up and they said, "Hey, Judge, we just wanted to let you know we dismissed this complaint that was filed against you." And at the time, I was teaching, so I wasn't even practicing. So I'm thinking, what complaint? I don't have any clients. And so they said, "Well, do you know a person by the name of Candace Wilrich Scott?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's my sister." And they said, "Well, she filed a series of complaints against you, and that if you indeed had committed these acts, which we know you didn't, you would be in jail right now." I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
What? And so they dismissed the complaint, and I explained to them that she was severely mentally ill, and and probably not adhering to any type of treatment regimen. And so they said, "Well, we've dismissed the complaints. She didn't like it, and she filed the second one. But we dismissed that one as well." But because bar complaints are open to the public, they said, "We want you to file a motion with the presiding judge to seal these records because you don't want anybody to see this stuff." I was like, "Okay, can you send me a copy of what she sent you so I can, and I will file the motion right away." So I got the record sealed, and what she wrote is just unrepeatable. So
You're laughing now, but when you learned of these complaints, I can only imagine.
well, it scared the hell out of me. Because at first it scared me at first when they said, "We've dismissed the complaint," and I'm thinking, what complaint? I haven't. I just got off the bench. I'm teaching. I have not had clients in years, and what complaint could possibly be out there? All of my clients that I represented in the past, they've been perfectly happy. So I'm racking my brain trying to figure out what was going on. And then when they told me my sister's name, I'm like, what? And so knowing of her past behavior, I could only imagine what I was just her victim of the month, and, so, we got it taken care of, but it was certainly alarming. It was alarming. That's what I would say. I can laugh about it now. I wasn't laughing about it then, certainly. But I can laugh about it now,
And thank goodness you can. So how does forgiveness promote personal and collective healing?
Ooh, that's a great question. I can say that forgiveness is lifting the burden, the weight off your shoulders. It's like taking Tylenol and the headache goes away. It is like the satisfaction of having a really good meal of something that you enjoy. It is the thrill of riding on a roller coaster and having that sensation in your stomach, because the weight of unforgiveness is really a burden that really drags you down. I mean, for the 9 years that I didn't speak to my siblings, I really didn't speak to any of my family, but particularly my siblings, I was weighted down the whole time. I mean, I love my siblings. I'm the oldest of of 7.
Uh-huh.
And although 2 of my siblings have passed on, I'm still the oldest, and I'm older than them. So I was like a surrogate mother to them when they were growing up. And I love them all dearly. I mean, I think they're just, they all, even my sister who's mentally ill, they all have great potential at being great people. And they're very different individuals, but they have great potential. They're talented individuals. And I've always seen their potential, and I love them for each of them, that they're very different. And I love that about them. And so it was a tremendous burden to carry, not being able to speak with them and communicate with them, particularly since my mom and my dad had passed on. And so here I am, sort of the matriarch of the family, but I don't have a relationship with these younger people that I know that they need a relationship with me, because they still need, I want to call it guidance, but it's actually support. It's kind of shoring them up and, helping them look at various options of things, engaging in intellectual conversations with them, engaging in just fun conversations with them. And so I knew I needed that, but I also knew that they needed that as well. And so it was a tremendous burden not speaking to them, but I had to not speak to them in order to deal with me. And dealing with me, it took 9 years to do that.
How can we practice forgiveness without risking re-injury?
Well, I think there's always the possibility of re-injury, simply because we don't have control over how other people react. But at the same time, I think that re-injury comes when we allow the actions or the words that people do or say to us to penetrate our heart in a way that there shouldn't be. Because sometimes I think that when there's re-injury, it's almost like a snuffing out of the light that you're shining, or it's almost like the candle is about to go out. And so you have to be strong enough to say, no, I'm going to let my light shine, and to not accept that re-injury. I'm not going to accept that, because you may be reacting to me in a way, or saying things to me, or doing something to me that is totally out of place. And oftentimes it's based upon miscommunication, and so one of the things that, for example, I'll give you an example. One of the things that my middle sister does, she considers herself an evangelist. That's what she calls herself. What she does is that if something is happening, let me see if I can think of an example. My sister, the youngest sister, who's mentally ill, sometimes she goes off on a tangent, and she sends out a group text message to the family saying she's going to sue us because we are trying to take power of attorney over her. Nobody's trying to take power of attorney over her. This is all in her imagination. So what my evangelist sister will do is she'll send some Bible verse out. So what I have asked her is, you sent out this Bible verse, something that Paul said. Why do you think that's appropriate to say to my sister Candy when she's in the throes of a mental health issue? Because the reason she's thinking that somebody's going to take power of attorney over her is she's either in a manic phase or she's in a depressive phase because she's bipolar. And so my sister never answers me, or I can't remember, a few months ago, she sent some Bible verse out to me for some, I can't remember what. I remember. So my youngest sister and my youngest sister sent out a message to me and my other sister. So one sister's named Candy. Candy is the one with the mental health issue. My other sister's name is April. So she sent out a text message to us and she said, I really, really miss Mom. And so I just responded to her as like, I miss Mom also. And I relish looking at the hand pieces that she sewed, hand quilt pieces that she sewed for Amaya. And I've actually framed a couple of pieces that we're going to give to Yaya. So she and I are just engaging in this conversation about our mom. But my sister April is part of the conversation, but she's not joining in. So finally, we had kind of ended the conversation, and April sends out this Bible verse, and something about let the dead be with the dead or something. There's a Bible verse that says something like that, but I can't remember the exact quote. And so I asked her, I said, well, why did you send that out to us? Do you not think we don't have a right to remember our mom and to be thankful for the little gifts that she gave us and the things that she took her time to make by hand? What is this about? And I said, if you're trying to proselytize, I said, why do you think that Candy and I need to be proselytized to? We're not one of your subjects that you're trying to bring salvation to. I said, you can't bring salvation to me. That's not your role, even though I know that's what the church teaches you to do, but that's not your role. And I said, I am not a babe in Christ. So stop proselytizing to me. And no response. There's never a response. Never, ever a response.
So here's another question as it relates to re-injury. Is it possible to re-injure yourself? If you took the attitude toward your sister, that this is something that is outside of your power or even outside of the relationship that we have with each other. Can unforgiveness re-enter?
Oh, I think it could. I mean, I think that if you're not strong spiritually and not dealing from a higher conscious perspective, I think it would easily, you could easily allow yourself to be re-injured and then go through the whole concept over again, the whole forgiveness process, because forgiveness is a process. But I think that, when you know that you're elevating your conscious thinking, and when you have that peace that comes with forgiveness, for me, I don't want to lose that peace. It's peaceful to not have the burden of unforgiveness weighing on you. And so I don't try to lose that I don't want to lose the peace, but I also, the way I have reacted with my sister is I try to speak my peace. So by saying to her, I'm not a babe in Christ, you don't have to proselytize to me. I know, I didn't say this, but I know the Bible probably as well as you do. Most of the time when she proselytizes, it's only from the New Testament. She rarely refers to the Old Testament, any of the scriptures there. So it's, what I try to do is I look at her response as a test almost. And as a test, it's kind of, I look at it as coming from a dark place. And so when I get that inkling in my heart, that's what she's doing, I immediately start focusing on the light of, and staying in the light, so that I don't allow myself to get into the whole concept and feeling of, oh no, she's hurt me again, or she said something to me that really stings in a way and it's made me angry or upset. I just don't get upset at all. And part of that is my decision to say, if I want you to accept me for who I am, I'm going to accept you for who you are. Mm-hmm. I accept you. You are an evangelist. You believe in the Bible only, and these are the things that you do based upon your beliefs. I accept that. I support that. I mean, she goes on these mission trips every summer, and I always contribute money to her for her travel costs. So it's like I accept that who you are. She teaches in she's a school teacher. She teaches in a very poor school district in Texas, and this year she needed a lot of things for her students in her classroom, and she put a list on Amazon, a wish list on Amazon, and sent it out to a few people to help buy various things for her kids in her classroom. And I looked at the list, and the items weren't very expensive, so I just bought them all for her and sent them to her. So I want to support her in her life, mm-hmm. and in the things that she wants to do. Now, whether I agree with her with what she's doing, that's a totally different thing. But it's not for me to determine whether it's right or wrong. That's her choice that she's making, and that's her path. I think that's her path of ascension. And I think it's kind of like we were talking about the other day, many paths, one source. Mm-hmm. And so she's going there on her own path. I think that, there's probably a lot of things she is going to learn on her path, because she's religious. She's not spiritual. Uh-huh. And, when, I think it was last summer she came to visit Pam and I, and we had some really good conversations about spirituality and where we had been studying and the types of things that we had been studying. And she basically said, you guys are so far ahead of me. I'm not even there yet. And so I know that she has work to do. So I just accept her, and by accepting her, And I don't have to enter into that mode of unforgiveness in order to have to forgive, because I don't let it hurt me. I don't let it affect my heart, because I want my heart to be continuously filled with love. And because I love her as my sister, as a person, as a creation of the source, that's unconditional. And so I'm not going to let anything that she does interfere with that love that I have for her.
It brings up another question for me. I was first going to say, how can forgiveness be practiced toward those who have harmed others or committed extremely heinous acts toward others? But I think I can see how now, as you describe your relationship with your family. But how would you respond to that question?
That's really, I mean, that is phenomenal that you asked that, because I've actually been dealing with that over the last week or so, as the political focus has been on Donald Trump. And of course, there are those that think he's, the best thing since apple pie and, hot dogs. And then there are those who believe that he's the most wicked man alive. And I believe that Donald Trump is evil. That's my view. I believe that he's an evil man, that he's been an evil man for a long time. He purposely hurts people. He purposely says things that are disgusting and disgraceful. He does things that are disgusting and disgraceful. And so what I have been meditating and praying about is, how do I get past his acts to forgive him and to operate from unconditional love and non-judgment? And I know that every time I label him as disgusting or despicable, or, I'm judging him. And so I've been working on that. And I know part of the answer is allowing unconditional love for him, despite his actions and his behavior, to rise to the surface. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there, because I think that if there's any recompense for his behavior, that is something that has to be dealt with by other systems, like the judicial system or the political system in some way. But it's not for me to really deal with. But I have to stop really forming a judgmental opinion of him, because he also is a creation of the source, and he also has an opportunity to change his ways. I don't know if he is so immersed in the dark side of life that he could ever do that, but I'm dealing with that, on a daily basis. Every time, it's all over the news. Everything, something comes on, and it's about Trump, and it's just, and so what I try to do is stop listening to newscasts, and stop listening to it, because the more I listen to it, the more I move away from forgiveness. And so I have to stop listening to it in order to be at a place of peace. Because in order to forgive, you have to be in a peaceful mode, and you have to, and being in that peaceful mode is what allows love to come through. And and your light to come through. And if you're not there, it's not gonna come. And so, I meditate about it every day, and I'm getting closer. I know that I'm getting closer, because now things that I hear just don't impact me the way they had been impacting me.
Are there any other strategies you suggested? Not listening to the news report.
Hmm.
You've also suggested that meditation
Hmm.
is another way. Are there other strategies that you might use to overcome this?
Well, that I think that studying from various authors, that like Ernest Holmes, some of his principles. Walter Reed is another guy that I like to read, and focusing on the four agreements, because they really help put things in perspective. So I think part of it is your own self-study,
Mhm.
um, and improving yourself. And sometimes it's going back and reading things that you probably read 3 or 4 times, but reading it again, because every time I read something, like if I read something that Emmett Fox has written, I really like Emmett Fox. Every time I get a new meaning out of it, and every time, if I'm have a dilemma that I'm that's being perplexing to me, that I will find something that gives the answer, or at least gives the suggestion of an answer for me and how I can resolve it. But I think that prayer and meditation really are the best way
Mhm.
to deal with it, because when you go to that quiet place and you still your mind so that you can hear, because to me, meditation is not me talking, it's the Most High talking to me.
Mhm.
And that's when I can hear, and I can hear what's being said or what's being taught. I think one other thing that I do, and I've done this since I was a kid. Whenever I had a problem or a dilemma, I will say, I'm going to sleep on it.
Uh-huh.
And usually when I sleep on it, the answer will come to me. It will come through a dream, or it will just come through a revelation. And it's not just with issues of forgiveness. I've tested this out as a lawyer in my law practice, and I would have a difficult case and not really understand how to approach answering a particular problem, or how to argue a point to the jury. And I would say, I'm going to sleep on it. By the morning, I would have my answer.
That's interesting because I've used um, a technique such as that before in my own life experience. I've been a information engineer for years, and I think that is part of the reason why I've been able to research and find the things that I really need that support my own life and
Mm-hmm.
my living. And I called it engineering because
Mm-hmm.
I would be working on data processing and telecommunication projects and have a difficult time marrying new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And my job was to not only replace old equipment and antiquated ways of operating uh, for the bank, which is who I was working for at the time, but it's also to build in some, um, I guess you would call it a new practical operative methods
Mm-hmm.
into the solution that I was coming up with. And so I'm marrying technology that is new to ideas at the same time that will build in additional kinds of support for the organizations that I was working for, within the bank. And it worked for me as well. And like I said, I called it Imagineering because I would pray and meditate on what it is that seemed to be the issue and wake up in the morning with a solution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the ways, one of the strategies actually that we can use to overcome the barriers that we may see in our daily lives. And it can work. It's a technique or a strategy that will work no matter what. Mm-hmm. And it's about the incorporation of the universe, right, literally into our living and the ability to solve problems that seem outside of our present way of thinking, and to me, it is about quieting myself to a point where I can access that information because it is already available. Mm-hmm. I just need to quiet the mind, give myself an opportunity to focus on what the universe has to say about what it is that I'm experiencing, because it's generally me, that conscious mind that is standing in the way, of me being able to see with that degree of clarity. So I'm wanting to respect your time, and we have gotten to just over an hour, but I have a couple more questions that I'd like to ask if you still have a little bit more time. Okay. This one relates to forgiveness as far as communication is concerned, and how we see. Let me just describe a situation, because I have had the experience of forgiving a situation, circumstance, or a person, and then finding myself later on back in unforgiveness. About something that I thought I had unconditionally surrendered. Have you had that experience, and what have you done in those situations?
Well, I've had it in several instances, but one would be with a former partner who was very unfaithful, and I was very committed to the relationship. I'm kind of a person that, if I consider myself to be in love with you, then I'm all in. I'm all in. I want to do whatever it takes to make it work until something happens that causes mistrust. Because I really start off trusting people. I never really have mistrust unless someone gives me a reason to mistrust. And so the person and I are still good friends, but I would say maybe 10 years ago, I was still in a point where at times when we would have a conversation, things would come up in my head and would put me right back into unforgiveness. And so I had to, I really had to focus on me and why I allowed myself to go back there. And what I realized was that the reciprocity that I expected in the relationship, the person didn't have the capacity to provide that. And that in understanding who that person was, in all of her previous relationships, they had ended because of her infidelity. And so when I realized that I was trying to change her behavior through my commitment to her, and that I didn't have the capacity to change her behavior, and that I didn't understand that at the time, so it deeply hurt me for the infidelity to have occurred, which ultimately resulted in the ending of the relationship. And so for a number of years we didn't speak, but when we did speak, I basically told her that I forgave her. But in the back of my mind, I knew I hadn't really, because I was still holding on to the hurt from the lack of reciprocity. And so it wasn't until I met Pam and began dating Pam. And Pam has been a student of metaphysics, spirituality for many, many years. And she really began to introduce me to metaphysics and spirituality. And when I began to understand what I was doing to myself by not letting go, and how by not letting go, I really wasn't fully committed to Pam, then I had to work on myself. And I worked on myself to forgive myself. And it was like, I can't remember exactly the quote that Reverend Jack said, but it was something like, I forgive you for my expectations of you. And so I had to forgive myself for my expectations of another person who could not provide what I thought I needed and should have and deserved as a person. And so part of it was, again, going within to pray, to meditate, to study, to read about forgiveness, to from any source, for years before I got into metaphysics and spirituality, my go-to source was the Bible, and I would look up, the Bible verses on forgiveness and see who was talking and who were they talking to, and why was there a need to talk about the concept of forgiveness in that particular setting in the Bible, to try to understand it for myself in order to then work on me in terms of forgiving. And so by doing that, I can now be her friend. We talk and we text all the time. And I don't have those feelings anymore.
So you do not feel displeased when you remind yourself of those memories?
No.
Okay.
But what I do is I try to look for the joy that was there. because there was joy in certain aspects of the relationship. And so, and I try to understand her from her perspective, and I can separate out us having been in a relationship to of being partners, to us being in a relationship of friendship.
Uh-huh.
And so because I look at us as friends, then it's very easy to not go back to that place.
Hmm. So, are there any self-love boundaries that have been magnified as a result of practicing forgiveness? I know.
Boundaries in terms of, are you talking about sort of like defensive mechanisms or something like that?
I'm talking about how you take a look at the ways that you support yourself in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Have they expanded as a result of
Mm-hmm.
practicing self-love? I
Mm-hmm.
know you just went through a series of medical procedures,
Mm-hmm.
and self-love had to play a major role,
Mm-hmm.
in the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about uh, my ideas of self-love, say 5 or 10 years ago, you know, and the way that I think about it today, there's a big difference,
Mm-hmm.
and I think 5 or 10 years ago, for instance, just as an example, I would not have incorporated people in the process that could monitor, for instance, what was going on um, when I wasn't able to be completely present.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I would be under anesthesia or something like that, but I would be so focused on my idea of what I believed self-care was
Mm-hmm.
that I would overlook, some of the things that I might practice that were really in my own best interest.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, today I'm able to incorporate um, help in the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so just as an example, that's one of the ways that I believe my um, own perspective around self care,
Mm-hmm.
has really um, become very acute to me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really able to see some of the gaps. You know, and I think what's also helped is having connections.
Mm-hmm.
In around me in the community,
Mm-hmm.
where um, people have talked about healing and overcoming
Mm-hmm.
situations and circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
that have really inspired me to see differently,
Mm-hmm.
see
Mm-hmm.
life differently, and see what self-care. What are some of the things, or how do you see yourself expanding as far as your self-care?
Mm-hmm.
And um, and part of the process for me has been also forgiving myself for the way that I really stood in the way, of
Mm-hmm.
my best and highest good, so to speak.
Self-care has always been hard for me.
Okay.
And sometimes it still is hard. I'm getting better at it. For so long, I feel like I cared more about other people and their issues or dilemmas than I cared about myself. I always put others before me. And what I had a tendency to do is just throw myself into work and just not even think about self-care. My job, besides working, was generally caring for my daughter. And I was a single parent until Pam and I got together when my daughter was around 10 or 11. And so besides work, it was my child. And there was really no room for me. I was the last on the list. But then uniting with Pam and her teaching and talking about metaphysics and her own example of self-care began to help me focus on myself
Mm-hmm.
and how I was really neglecting myself. And by neglecting myself, I was actually doing harm to myself, which has manifested in having just a variety and a series of health issues. And so I think that since I retired at the end of 2021, my total focus has turned to self-care.
Uh-huh.
That's the mode I'm in now. And because of that, I don't let the negativity or the toxicness of not being able to exercise self-care really penetrate, because it I know that I'm here for a purpose, and that my purpose is to engage in conversations like this and other types of conversations. And so in order to be able to do that, I have to exercise self-care. And so self-care has been a great improvement, I would say, in the last 3 years or 2 years for me, because before that, despite the conversations that Pam and I would have, and my understanding the need for self-care, I really was not there. I was still in that mode about I've got to take care of everybody around me. I've got to solve everybody else's problems, and I don't have time to deal with my own stuff. And so now I'm not there anymore. And what I find is that self-care can really be a pleasant process. It's tough, but it can be a pleasant process. And so, just with my latest experience, I have physical therapy and occupational therapy 4 times a week. And part of what the therapy is to build strength and endurance and stamina. And I can't even tell you how much stronger I have gotten in the last 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the things that I'm able to do that if I wasn't in a self-care mode, I would have probably be saying, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Mhm.
I'm not where I'm going to be yet, but the where I am in my therapy is amazing. My therapist, just every week there's a challenge, and I meet the challenge, and um, so it really gives a very deep satisfaction, and a satisfaction that I have missed for a long, long time. I think probably the last time I was maybe in a self-care mode was when I was in college. And in college, I was a vegetarian. I was a runner or a jogger. I played basketball, so I was really physically fit. Concerned about what I put into my body, what the kinds of activities that I um, participated in. But then somehow I lost that, after going to law school and then becoming a lawyer. And my focus began to be on caring for others as opposed to caring for myself.
I am aware of some of the things that you have experienced recently, but for those people who are listening to our talk, would you describe um, the situation and circumstances that have led to the current experiences that you're dealing with as far as rehabilitation is concerned?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, on May 24th, I learned that I had had a heart attack sometime in 3 weeks prior to May 24th, and I was admitted to the hospital, and some stents were placed in my left artery. While in the hospital, I also had a wound on my leg that wasn't healing, that they didn't know what the cause of the wound was. I'm diabetic, but they said it wasn't as a result of diabetes. There was no infection. There was it hadn't penetrated to the bone, but the wound was just eating away at my flesh, and they didn't know what it was. Um, Fast forward to about June 20th, I was readmitted to the hospital because the wound had grown progressively worse. My tendon in my right leg and my Achilles had become detached. So the question was whether or not they could save my leg or amputate my leg. Well, they could have saved my leg if I had been able to go through a surgery every 2 weeks and go under anesthesia. But my cardiologist said that that was a sure recipe for dying, having a heart attack on the table, because I couldn't, with the heart issue, I could not undergo surgery and anesthesia every 2 weeks. So the other option was a below the knee amputation. And so I had a below the knee amputation on my right leg on June the 30th. And I got out of the hospital on July 7th and was admitted to a rehab center. And I stayed in the rehab center for about 3 weeks. Got out of there on July 23rd. So I've been at home since then, and in occupational therapy, physical therapy, home nurse care. My next step after my home therapy ends, is to get fitted for a prosthesis and then learn how to walk again using a prosthesis.
And how has forgiveness played a role in your healing?
Well, forgiveness has been a very big part of it, because one of the things that some of the medical professionals, and certainly my family, and a good friend of mine who is a surgeon, we've concluded is that there was some medical neglect. And because of that, having your leg amputated, you're disabled, and it changes your entire life. And you could possibly be bitter. But once the decision was made that there was no alternative other than amputation of my lower leg, I immediately went into prayer and meditation about it, asking the source, the creator, Mother, Father, God, to provide me guidance, because now I was going to be the same but different, because my ability was going to be severely limited. And the first thing that I was told through the Spirit is that I'd have to forgive those who I think may have neglected my care.
Uh-huh.
That I couldn't move on without forgiving them, and that I didn't need to worry about what had been done or had not been done. What I needed to concentrate on is how I was going to live.
Uh-huh.
And the Spirit also told me that I should think about losing that part of my leg as releasing all of the ill will that had ever occurred in my life, that it was gone.
Wow.
That I was a new person, that I was on my path of ascension, that I had a job to do, and my job was to teach about unconditional love, humility, forgiveness, charity, justice, peace, unity, and that I needed to be focused on that. And also, in the meantime, I was going to be equipped with everything that I needed to be equipped with in order to carry on my life. And that I would be in a wheelchair for a while, but it was going to be short-lived, because once I get the prosthesis and learn how to walk with the prosthesis, I won't need the wheelchair. That I would have other inconveniences of life, like in the middle of the night, you might have to go to the bathroom. Well, I just can't get up and walk to the bathroom anymore. I have to have I have a portable potty chair that's in the bedroom, and I have to have help getting up and getting on that potty chair, and so but now I've gotten to the point where I can do it myself without necessarily having help. So that I needed to do my exercises daily, because I needed to build my upper body strength. I needed to build up the strength in my hips. My left leg has always been sort of my non-dominant leg, and therefore it was the weaker leg, and I needed to build that up. And so the Spirit just started working with me and telling me all of these things. And the Spirit told me not to be ashamed, that I wasn't the only person in the world that had an amputation, that through the amputation, I would have a greater sense of understanding of the concept of humility, that I would recognize the shortcomings of the healthcare system in this country, that I would understand some of the issues that are being faced by people with disabilities, the things that are not there that we sort of take for granted, the types of equipment that's needed that doesn't always fit, so medical equipment is kind of built on a model of one thing fits everybody, but it's not really like that. And sometimes you have to make things retrofit or change them a little bit. So, so through those meditations and just talking and listening to the spirit talk to me, I accepted the need to forgive, and I did. And I accepted my new role in terms of what I was going to have to do to take care of myself. And that if I want to be as independent as possible, these are the things that I'm going to have to learn how to do. And it's a very humbling experience. And fortunately, I have a very loving family that, provides assistance to me. And so everything that through the rehab and through my occupational and physical therapy, every goal that they set for me, I've mastered those goals. So for example, on Friday, my occupational therapist said, okay, part of your evaluation today is for you to go into the kitchen and make yourself a meal. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, what about if I made a cake over the weekend? Would that qualify for the evaluation? And they said, you did what? I said, I baked a cake over the weekend. And they're like, tell us how you did it. So I said, no, I won't. I'll not only tell you, I'll show you what I did. So I wheeled myself around in the kitchen and showed them what I did and gave them a step-by-step blow. And they're like, did you really do that? And I said, okay, Pam is coming in the room. She'll tell you. I said, the only thing that Pam had to help me do was to get the bowls off the high shelf. I said, because I couldn't reach them. But, and I said, so other than that, I did everything. And I said, and then she put the cake in the oven and out of the oven because it's kind of awkward trying to put a cake in the oven from a wheelchair. And they were just amazed. They were amazed. I said, so do I still need to make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? I said, and I made the cake from scratch. I didn't use a box cake. This was made from scratch. And they were just like, they were amazed. So.
I have been amazed too at your attitude. I think part of the forgiveness that we're speaking of was reflected in your attitude and in your movements, even while you were in the hospital. Mm-hmm. How all of the patients there noticed the difference in your attitude and the attitude that they were having in similar situations.
Yeah.
And I have been extremely grateful and impressed with the light that I see in you. And you actually are the first interview that I'm doing on spiritual principles because you inspired me.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Well, it's an honor to be able to sit here and talk to you about forgiveness because it's really almost like one of my favorite subjects. And I talk to people about it all the time. And I don't remember saying this, but my family said that when I came out of the coma, I told my daughter, they sent me back to you. And I apparently said that several times. Yeah. And then I said, I said to them, they told me to teach you about unconditional love and forgiveness. I don't remember saying that, but they said I kept repeating that. And every time a nurse would come in, I would say, it's about unconditional love and forgiveness, unconditional. I was just saying that to people. I don't remember it, but so I'm trying to practice it. I'm trying to practice it every day, and keeping that positive light is inspiring to me. It's one of the things that I had to do for my physical therapist this week is I had to stand up from my wheelchair, hold on to a walker, and basically do a 180-degree turn. So you do kind of a pivot with your foot and twist your hips to do a turn with the walker, and then sit down on the couch, then get up from the couch and do that 180-degree turn and sit back down into the wheelchair. So he didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And at first I kind of thought, oh, this is new. I haven't done this before. And so what he told me, he said, I want you to use the ball of your foot to pivot, because I had been trying to practice pivoting, but I had my foot flat on the ground. But when he said ball of your foot, I said, yeah, okay. I said, oh, I can do it. And he goes, okay, show me. And I did it. And he goes, okay, you got to do it again. And I did it again. And so I was so happy with that accomplishment, because basically that's going to then allow me to get out of the wheelchair and begin to use the walker. I've still got to build some upper body strength in order to hop around on that walker, but I'll be able to do that. I think probably within a couple of weeks I'll be there, but
I'm sure you will.
but it's just, I feel the light just emanating from me every day.
And see, I know so many people that get beat down by the circumstances and situations of life. And I'm working in the healthcare and educational communities myself. And I tell people, I said, there are people that have been in the same or similar situations who have absolutely triumphed over the circumstances. And we need to hear those stories, because when we find ourselves in one of those pits that we ourselves put us in, there's a way out.
Yep, there is.
And there are people who have demonstrated that truth. And the truth really does set us free.
It does. And I think also that in our life, we take so many things for granted.
Yes.
And the humbling experience is the realization of what we've taken for granted and not really treasured, and I probably have, that feeling almost every day, in terms of, wow, I just used to take this granted, and now I can't do it the same way. I have to do it a different way. But just because I have to do it a different way doesn't mean I can't do it. I can still do it, but it might be a little bit more difficult, or it might take me longer, to do things that normally, would have taken 5 minutes. Now it might take 15 minutes, so it's just so many things that we take for granted in life. And so every day I meditate about not taking anything for granted and having gratitude and thankfulness for everything, just having life and being able to be here and being able to go through the exercises in physical therapy or occupational therapy, being able to get myself in the shower and take a shower without, without assistance or supervision, being able to get myself dressed, because you don't realize how both of those legs really help you to do stuff until you're
Exactly.
missing one of them, and then it's like, okay, I only have one leg, so I got to figure out how to do this and that, but I do it with gratitude, and every day there's another milestone of accomplishment. But part of that milestone comes from me getting stronger, both physically and mentally stronger as well. And part of that getting stronger mentally is the self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's the self-care.
And I would add, it's also spiritual strength as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, I see the disabilities and what I might not be able to do, or what may take a little longer to do. But look at all the things that I can do,
mm-hmm.
As opposed to what I can't.
Right, exactly.
And that has been such a powerful lesson in my own life as well, living with HIV for more than 40 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, seeing the glass half full as opposed to half empty.
Half empty. Yeah. And so that's, and we also, whatever it is that we focus on, that's what we get more of.
That's right.
So thank you so much for this.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. I always love talking to you, Maurice. I love listening to your insight on things. It's just, I learned so much from you. So I'm very appreciative of you as well.
Thank you. And, I know it's spirit speaking through both of us to each other and to the rest of the world. So I thank you again for the time that you've spent with me this evening. And I know that what you've shared with me will be important to other people, and they will also feel your energy,
I hope so.
And know that greater possibilities are in front of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I've kept you up. I heard what time you went to bed, so
it's okay. I'll sleep good tonight. That's for sure.
Thank you, Judge Penny.
You're welcome. All right. You have a good evening.
And you have a good evening as well, and a good rest of the weekend. Look forward to seeing you on Monday.
Okay, will do. All
good
right.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to give you an insight into how we may practice these principles in such a way that freedom comes to each of us. It's a commitment that I hope each of you can make to this practice that I know has set me and others free from the chaos and the confusion. Thanks for listening.